Hello, genealogist. This is Craig, and this is just genealogy. And I wanted to relate a story to you that I had a conversation I had 30 years ago, maybe 25, probably 35. I was given a lecture on Civil War, how to research a Civil War soldier early in my career. I was in Loudoun County, Virginia, given this lecture. So it was a local lecture, one of my first. And I was approached after the lecture by someone who asked if she could ask a question. And you know me, of course, I love questions. And she said, I've been searching for the records of the Confederate Hospital in Charlottesville. My ancestor was there. I can't find them. And I said to her, what have you looked at? And she said, I've looked at all the records, Mr. Scott. And I thought to myself, no, she hasn't. But let's find out. No, well, which records did you look at? Well, I looked at the microfilm. Well, if she looked at the microfilm, she might have seen compiled military service records that identified that her individual was in the hospital at Charlottesville, the General Hospital in Charlottesville, or maybe one other. Of course, I didn't know that how many hospitals were in Charlottesville at the time. I figured if she was looking for a hospital in Charlottesville, the first opportunity would be the General Hospital in Charlottesville. So I went to my handy dandy preliminary inventory of the War Department collection of Confederate records, record group 109, and I looked up Charlottesville. And I knew it was in there because I was in the process, I think at the time, of indexing this because it was 1994. So like I say, either it may have been before 1994, but I doubt it. It may have been in the process of indexing. But anyway, so I looked for hospitals in Charlottesville so that I could help her. Got back to her, gave her her answer. There is a register of patients, General Hospital at Charlottesville, 1861 to 1865, 2 volumes. Well, that covers pretty much the entire war. It shows patient's name, rank, organization, ward, and bed number. I love bed numbers because with a bed number, I can tell you who was sitting next to them, who was laying next to them in the bed on the left and the bed on the right and the bed across the hall. And complaint. And I especially like that organization is there also because it allows me to know how many people, if I do an analysis, how many people from a specific unit were admitted at the same time. Date admitted, that's how I know that. Disposition of case, that means did they live? Did they die? Were they discharged to duty? Were they discharged to medical discharge? And remarks. You also love remarks. Entries are arranged roughly by date of admittance until May 1862, after which the patient number is shown and the names are arranged numerically. What fun. The index is arranged alphabetically by initial letter of patient's surname. There also is a casebook for Delavan Hospital at Charlottesville, 1864, 1 volume, 2 inches. And this volume contains some reports on individual cases showing name, date patient was admitted, nature of disease or wound, treatment or operation performed, and progress and disposition of case, some statistical reports on disease, narrative reports on cases of gangrene and erysipelas treated, names of patients are not shown, and some private accounts. The reports are arranged by type of material. Now it's up to you to figure out what erysipelas is. So that was the preliminary inventory. And then I got to thinking, well, is there anything else? What am I missing? So what I went to was the Confederacy, which is a guide to the archives of the government of the Confederate States of America by Henry Putney Beers. And see that picture? It's one of my favorite pictures that doesn't relate to the Civil War, but everybody seems to think it does. One of those guys is John Wilkes Booth. These are the grays going to John Brown's hanging in Charlestown, West Virginia in 1859, before the Civil War. Wilkes asked if he could go, so they gave him a uniform and he went. He's a famous guy at the time, in Richmond anyway. When I go to this book, I find that there is, on page 191, a entry for in Virginia in Record Group 109, a case book for Delavan. We know about that one. No new information there. Then we have an entry for General Hospital, Charlottesville. Established in 1861 in buildings of the University of Virginia. And we didn't know that before. Records presented to the War Department in 1877 by Dr. James L. Cabell, who had been the surgeon in charge of the hospital, include a register of patients, 22 July 1861 to August 2nd, 1865, with alphabetical name index. Well, we sort of knew that. I'm not sure we knew the dates specifically, but then there's another thing, and that's records in other custody. Duke University Library has a press copy of books of letters sent by Surgeon Cabell, 15 September 1861 to April 25th, 1862, a register of patients, January 1862 to May 2nd, 1865. That's interesting because we have another register of patients. One wonders if it's a copy book or whether it's a different register of patients. A descriptive list and account of pay and clothing of hospital personnel, 1862 to 64. So now we know who the people who were in the hospital, working in the hospital, and patients in the hospital. Accounts of supplies, equipments, tools, and services purchased August 28th, December 4th, 1861. And invoices of medicines purchased and issued 15 November 1862 to July 20th, 1863. The Department of Archives at Louisiana State University, Joseph J. Jones Papers, has a letters sent book of Surgeon Cabell, 20 March 1863 to 8 April 1865. The Louisiana State Museum Library in New Orleans has letters sent and letters and orders received by Division II of the General Hospital, 16 January 1863 to 3 February 1865. Now, one wonders, and I don't know because I haven't looked those registers in other people's custody, if one register is Division I of the hospital and the other register is Division II. But that said, what else is there? Well, every hospital was taken care of by a medical director. And there, in fact, on page 175 is something that says that requisitions and abstracts of hospitals in Danville, Lynchburg, and Charlottesville are in the custody of, it looks like, the Western Reserve Historical Society in the W.P. Palmer collection. So these are the records of a Surgeon Carrington, who was the medical director for Danville, Lynchburg, and Charlottesville. When somebody says all, you want to question it. When somebody gives you a little bit and not a whole bunch, you always want to wonder if there's more. And this is the second discussion I've had with you about where somebody has told me, I've looked at all the records, or you've looked at all the records. Remember the Navy ship records for the Red Rover? So here we have another case of someone saying, I looked at all the records, and in fact, they hadn't. Now, the Confederacy, this book, there also is a book for the Union. These two books, now in paperback, are available from the National Archives and their publications division. They're not available from Heritage Books. So you have to purchase them. I would recommend that if you're into Civil War research and really interested in the records, that you go ahead and purchase those, largely because if you listened to me today, you found out there was something called Records in Other Custody. And they spent a lot of time creating information about records in other custody. Now, the basics are the preliminary inventory, the War Department collection of Confederate records, which I've talked about before, and that is available from Heritage Books. So this has been Craig. This has been Just Genealogy. And just another example of somebody saying, I've looked at all the records, or you've looked at all the records, and living proof that that rarely is the case, at least in the 2 times that I've told you about. So 100%. See you tomorrow.